rush of sympathy that had threatened to overtake him, and because he was afraid he might give in and decide they didn't need to search this house and barn, he turned to Baker. "Go explain to her what we're doing. Tell her we mean no harm." "Yes, sir." "But, Baker, make sure she understands we aren't going to leave until we get what we came for. The needs of our soldiers must come first." After nodding, Baker started barking to the others. "You heard Captain Kelly. Go!" The 4 other men scattered like fleas in a barnyard, while Baker walked over to speak to the woman. Ethan watched 2 of his men enter her storm cellar and breathed an inward sigh of relief. There had to be something down there, maybe even some meat curing. They could take it to their unit, and for once those boys could have something to eat besides mealy hardtack. He was warmed by that thought as he watched Baker move into the house, and his unease about the woman dissipated, until he noticed she was now holding one of the posts of her front porch in a death grip. She looked terrified. He should have done the talking. Announced their intention to gather supplies for the soldiers of the Confederacy by order of President Jefferson Davis himself, rather than asking Baker to do it. Feeling far older than his 29 years, he moved closer and studied her when she turned to look at him. He was sure she couldn't quite see his face in the shadows, but he could see tears forming in her eyes. She said nothing, but let go of the post and wrapped her arms and the ugly shawl around her chest and waist more securely, almost as if she could shield her body from his men. Or perhaps he was the one she feared. He wasn't a small man, and he was also the one giving orders. His soldiers would do whatever he told them to do. Looking at her more closely, he realized her hair was darker than he'd earlier thought. Almost black, really. It hung in thick, riotous curls down her shoulders, and when she had turned he could see it went down her back, almost to her waist. Her loose dress was a faded pink calico with frayed cuffs. Her feet were in worn boots that looked too big. Obviously she'd done a little bit of requisitioning herself. But what caught his attention most was the way she continued to stare at him. Her eyes were dark. Maybe blue? Maybe green? Did it even matter? Never had someone looked at him with such stark terror. It drew him up short. He'd supervised dozens of these raids across the South. Most of the inhabitants were resentful. Some had been downright cordial and sympathetic, sharing stories about their own boys in uniform. As the men brought up jars from the cellar and carried a comforter from the house, her vivid eyes turned from his and tracked every move. Another tear ran down her face when Baker carried out a sack of flour in one hand and a quilt in the other. 2 privates behind him came out empty-handed. "Where's the rest, Baker?" he called out. "Ain't nothing more, sir." It wasn't a surprise. It was obvious other bands of men had done their share of looting. Knowing many homeowners hid their best belongings, even from their own troops, he hardened his voice. "Look harder," he called out. The men paused, but after a nod from Baker, they rushed to obey. The woman pressed a fist to her mouth as her eyes filled with more tears. He hated seeing her cry. It went against everything he'd been raised to be. His father and mother had taken great pains to teach him to be a gentleman, as befitting their station in Houston society. But though he felt sorry for her, a far different emotion overrode his concern. Resentment. He resented how her weeping made him feel, as though he were stealing from her for no good reason. Now he had no choice but to speak to her. He stepped closer, out of the shadows, close enough for her to see captain's bars on his uniform. Probably not close enough for her to see much of his face under the brim of his hat. "You'd best dry your tears, miss," he called out. "Our soldiers need supplies. They are fighting for our cause. Everyone must make sacrifices. Everyone. Where have you hidden everything else?" After a brief moment, her fist left her mouth, but she didn't reply. She simply continued to stare at him in silence. What was wrong with her? Had this conflict already taken its toll on her? Some women were far too delicate for the ravages of war. Imagining his mother or his sister in such circumstances, he inwardly winced. Who had he become?